Hello and welcome to World News Midnight Edition on All 24 News. I'm your host, Karim Zachary. Coming up next are the headlines. Algeria hosts the first edition of the Arab International Conference, an exhibition for small and medium enterprises for 3 days. Also in our news, 151 countries voted in the second and fourth committees of the United Nations General Assembly in favor of the permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people over their natural resources in the occupied territories. Also coming up, the first session of the 4-day summit of Southeast Asian Bloc has put on the table different global issues to be tackled. And finally, while France is welcoming migrants rescued by the humanitarian ship Ocean Viking, the UK is firm to reach a final agreement with France on illegal crossings. Hello and welcome again to the details. Algerian Foreign Affairs Minister Mr. Mtala Mamra had bilateral meetings with his counterparts from the Netherlands, Senegal, Rwanda, Norway, Croatia and Palestine, as well as the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Mr. Josep Borrell. This was on the sidelines of the proceedings of the Paris Forum for Peace in its 5th edition. Algerian Justice Minister Mr. Abdelrachid Tabbi headed the Algerian delegation participating in the evaluation session at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. Mr. Tabbi stressed that Algeria is committed to work for the promotion and protection of human rights, underlining Algeria's refusal to impose a unilateral view of foreign values that do not recognize specificities.
تخصص الجزائر ثلث دخلها.
Algeria allocates 1/3 of its income to solidarity spending and social transfers with the aim of promoting economic, social and cultural rights, although it has faced in several periods a severe drop in its income due to fuel prices. Algeria believes in multilateralism and supports the principle of the universality of human rights and rejects any imposition of a single and unified model of social or political organization or a unilateral view of foreign values that do not recognize the philosophical, civilizational, cultural, historical, social and religious peculiarities of countries.
Still with Algeria-related news, Algeria, in cooperation with the Arab Union for the Development of Industrial Exports, hosts, starting from November 12th and for 3 days, the first edition of the Arab International Conference, an exhibition for small and medium enterprises. This international economic event is an opportunity to address the problem of small and medium enterprises, access to innovative and diversified financing tools, in addition to reviewing the successful Arab and African experiences in the field of developing of this type of institution.
We were briefed today. We are all proud of the level reached by small and medium enterprises in the field of industries, the 4th generation, and the technologies used by our youth, who are full of innovation, not to mention the enormous production capabilities that must be exploited to achieve economic integration with the support and accompaniment of small and medium enterprises, because they play an important and vital role in advanced and developing economies.
Following the declaration of the 2023 financial plan, a series of strikes has shaken up Morocco. The education sector in the country was the major part to be affected by the strikes, as numerous unions have called for a 2-day general strike. Many indicators alert that the sector is to witness major developments, especially that the Ministry of Education has threatened to sack those who support the strikes in the country. 151 countries voted in the second and fourth committees of the United Nations General Assembly in favor of the permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people over their natural resources in the occupied territories. In the same context, Palestinian President Mr. Mahmoud Abbas called during a phone call with the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Policy, Mr. Josep Borrell, for the need to start a political process that ends the Zionist occupation of Palestinian lands in accordance with the resolutions of international legitimacy.
It has become necessary to start a political path that ends the Zionist occupation of Palestinian lands in accordance with the resolutions of international legitimacy. We trust the European support for the Palestinian cause in international forums, with the importance of recognizing the state.
To Tunisia now. Tunisian President Mr. Kais Saied emphasized on Friday that the European side must understand that the course of the 25th of July 2021 was required to save the nation. This was the case, according to a statement from the Tunisian presidency, after Saied and Minister of Justice Leila Jafal met in the capital city of Tunis with European Commissioner for Justice Didier Reynders. The International Monetary Fund granted nearly $83 million to a loan to Mauritania over a period of 39 months to support macroeconomic stability and reform program in the country. Mauritania's economy faces major challenges due to the global economic crisis, repercussions, and search for concessional loans and bank bonds to support monetary policies and better control high inflation rates. And on Thursday, protesters in N'Djamena, Chad, lit tires on fire. Hospital staff and relatives report that at least 3 people have died in Chad's pro-democracy demonstrations since the country's ruling military council postponed elections until 2024. Social media video captured people shouting as they passed a protester who started a fire in Dembe, the 7th administrative district of N'Djamena. After several weeks of talks, the Ethiopian government signed a peace agreement with Tigray forces in Nairobi on Saturday. The Ethiopian government representative reiterated his government's commitment to the agreement and believed that it is a must to reach peace. Meanwhile, mediator Olusegun Obasanjo said the implementation would start immediately and would be in terms of unhindered humanitarian access, in terms of protection of civilians and disarmament. To the Middle East now. Bahrain held parliament elections on Saturday, an environment that rights groups describe a political repression after the US-allied Gulf Arab state has dissolved main opposition groups and cracked down on dissent. Authorities said voter turnout was more than 70% after polls closed on Saturday evening. However, they did not say when the results would be announced. In his last speech, United Nations spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric stated that envoys of the UN and high-ranking Russian officials are continuing their joint discussion in concerns of extension and expansion of Black Sea grain initiative. Dujarric described the discussions to be positive and constructive, relaying commitments to continue the progress for the situation to bring positive decisions for world market.
Negotiations are continuing with senior Russian officials to convey the UN Secretary General's commitment to pursuing an extended and expanded Black Sea grain initiative. Both UN officials met yesterday and today jointly with Sergei Vershinin, the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation. Ms. Greenspan also had positive and constructive discussions with the first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Andrei Belousov, and that was on facilitating unimpeded exports of Russian grain and fertilizer to global markets, relaying the commitments to continuing progress with all parties involved in that front in order to address growing global food insecurity.
Following the total withdrawal of Russian forces from the city of Kherson, outpouring of joy and tears were witnessed. Ukrainian people celebrated what they considered freedom from the Russian control of the city. This is considered the third major Russian retreat since the start of the war. However, it is the first to yield such a large territory. Carrying Ukrainian flags, citizens invaded the Ukrainian cities and sang victory songs as well as the Ukrainian national anthem to express their freedom.
Well, these are emotions that can't be expressed because it's a synergy of people who have been waiting for 8 months for this holiday, and they have waited, and today we all celebrate it together. This is just an unsurpassed holiday. Everyone envies it, not only in Kyiv, but all over the world. Kherson is on all the front pages today, so we're here today. I am from Kherson myself.
We're just happy. We thank our armed forces of Ukraine. We thank everyone. We think that we're Ukrainians. We think that we are all together. Thankful to God, thankful for everyone. We have waited 260 days for this day. Thank you.
The first session of the 4-day summit of Southeast Asian bloc have started on Saturday. The summit is hosted in Cambodia during the next 7 days. The summit put on the table different global issues to be tackled, starting from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, North Korean missile launches, and the Chinese rivalry with Western powers. Osama Ayadi has more.
Southeast Asian heads of government have held the first session of a 4-day summit taking place this week with visiting global leaders including U.S. President Joe Biden, as the region is witnessing a growing rivalry between China and Western powers. President Joe Biden hailed the launch of a new U.S.-ASEAN pact as a critical step towards tackling what he called the issues of our time. The will of the U.S. was clear as early as the beginning of the summit, as Biden's statement clarified the involvement of his country in focusing on the Indo-Pacific region, which, as they said, would guarantee an international order.
Today, we take another critical step, beginning a new era in our cooperation with the launch of the U.S.-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Together, we will tackle the biggest issues of our time, from climate to health security, defend against the significant threats of rule-based order, and to threats to the rule of law.
The summit, which is hosted by Cambodia, tackles a variety of global and tricky issues, ranging from the war in Ukraine, climate change, regional tensions over Taiwan Strait, and the North Korean missile launches. In a further part of the summit, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres declared that the international community failed Myanmar, as the bloc warned Naypyidaw of the possibility of being barred from the bloc's meetings if there will be no progress in the peace agreement which was signed last year.
Everybody has failed in relation to Myanmar. The international community as a whole has failed, and the UN is part of the international community. It is dramatic to see the suffering of the Myanmarese people.
For his part, South Korea's Prime Minister Yoon Suk-yeol proposed a three-way mechanism that guarantees dialogue with China and Japan. And on the other side, Yoon emphasized that North Korea's missile launches are considered a serious and unacceptable threat.
And the unilateral change in the status, coup by force, should never be tolerated. Peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region is directly related to our survival and prosperity.
On the same summit, Ukrainian foreign minister signed an amity and cooperation treaty with ASEAN bloc that Ukraine still seeks to strengthen its ties with. On the other hand, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is expected to attend one of the meetings amid the repeated calls of Kuleba to condemn the Russian military operation. ASEAN leaders also discussed other tensions in the region, including the Korean Peninsula and Taiwan, and agreed in principle to admit East Timor as the group's 11th member.
To Europe now, illegal migration continues to cause a trouble in the continent, and while France is welcoming migrants rescued by the humanitarian ship Ocean Viking, the UK is firm to reach a final agreement with France on illegal crossings. Zahra Farjani reports.
Migrants rescued in the Mediterranean by the humanitarian ship Ocean Viking arrived by bus in southern France to a holiday center transformed into a closed area where French authorities carry out checks and interviews for asylum seekers.
It is a waiting area, that is to say, a place that has been chosen to gather these people who do not yet have the right to access to the national territory, taking into account conditions in which they entered. So they are grouped here. They are kept here for a period that can go up to 20 days.
The refugee center has been declared an international waiting area for about 20 days. Migrants will not be able to leave it until refugee proceedings are completed.
Indeed, there is an important control by the police at the borders for the identification of people, civil status, nationality, are they minors or adults. From this, we will be able to work. Those who have to leave our territory, we will be able to initiate removal procedures. Those who can apply for asylum will also be able to do so from this structure, which is a waiting area, closed and secure, but inside we try to treat people as dignified as possible.
Illegal immigration is causing a dilemma in Europe. Britain and France are set to agree a deal, possibly as soon as Monday, to ramp up their joint efforts to stop illegal migrants from making perilous crossings of the English Channel. So far this year, about 40,000 people have crossed the Channel in small boats, up from 28,000 last year, putting pressure on European countries to find a way to slow the flow.
To the United States now. Senator Mark Kelly of the Democratic Party defeated Republican Blake Masters in his race for re-election on Friday in the state of Arizona, putting his party one victory away from securing control of the U.S. chamber. The details with Islam Said.
Midterm election reached the peak in the United States after recent polls show a neck-to-neck race between Democrats and Republicans with 49 seats each. 211 seats for Republicans and 199 seats for Democrats in the House of Representatives. Two more states left to determine who will control the U.S. Congress. Democrat Mark Kelly defeated Republican Blake Masters on Friday to win a U.S. Senate seat in Arizona, a contest that left Democrats one seat short in battle for control of the chamber.
It's clear we won the election. I mean, the math, I'm okay at, I'm pretty decent at math, and the math, supports the calls that the media, has made that I won this election.
They didn't have, it looked like...
Republican Party had expected big gains of these elections. However, some of its members put blame on candidates, saying that they are politically unqualified, while others accused former President Trump of dragging the GOP down after witnessing the worst midterm performance by the party out of power in 2 decades.
The midterms did not work out the way Donald Trump intended. He wanted to come out of the midterms riding high, looking like the person who had delivered a massive victory for the Republican Party, and that just did not happen. Of course, we still don't completely know whether the Republicans are going to take control of the House and the Senate, but they certainly did not score the kind of resounding win, the so-called red wave, that a lot of people and Trump were expecting. So now Trump is in a little bit of a diminished state. There are certainly elements within the Republican Party that see him or are beginning to see him as a liability.
Election results in Nevada and Georgia will now hinge over who can control the Senate and shape President Biden's next 2 years, where it would pave the way for former president to gain control of the White House again and block most of Biden's agenda. Democrats in need of one more seat for control, since Vice President Kamala Harris can cast the tie-breaking vote.
According to sources close to Trump, the former president plans to officially announce his 2024 presidential candidacy. He has stated that he would make a major statement Tuesday night. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a prospective 2024 opponent whom Trump has recently criticized on Truth Social and in rallies, will speak at a private Republican Governors Association gathering with fundraisers in Orlando, concurrently with Trump's announcement on Tuesday.
330 endorsements on nominations.
Still in the U.S., a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bomber and a Bell P-63 King Cobra fighter collided and crashed at a World War II commemorative airshow in Dallas. Emergency crews responded immediately to the crash. Both the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board have launched investigations into the accident. Still in the American continent, but now Canada, mass shooting took place at a park across the street from Montmorency College in the surroundings of Montreal. An unknown shooter shot 4 people who were later taken to the hospital with suffering from injuries. The incident forced thousands of students at 2 Montreal area colleges to go into lockdown while the police intensified search operation to find the attacker. Demonstrations over delayed census went violent on Friday in Bolivia's largest city, Santa Cruz, marking 3 weeks of protests. Protesters clashed with government-aligned groups involved in Molotov cocktails, motorcycles, firecrackers, stones, and sticks. Bolivian President Luis Arce called on the protesters to stop the violence.
Bolivians, men and women, want to live in peace. We are part of a culture of dialogue and peace. This is why we call to pacify between everyone, so we can continue on the path of stability and certainty and the wellness for the families in the plurinational state of Bolivia.
Attention, Colonel, I'm not the only one here. The whole people is watching the abuses, and this is about what I want you to make a compromise. Take back the MAS party supporters. Stop the violence against our people. Be on the side of the people. This is all what we want.
And now for more international news, the news in brief is with Sofian Kinturi. Let's follow.
Hundreds of climate change protesters took the streets of Lisbon on Saturday, with some storming into building where Portugal's economy minister, who previously worked in the oil industry, was speaking at a private event. China on Saturday launched a new cargo spacecraft to its space station in preparation for a coming crewed mission. This is the first time that Chinese astronauts in space have witnessed the arrival of cargo craft in the country's space station. Heavy rain caused floods in eastern Spain, in the region of Valencia on Saturday, forcing emergency services to rescue people from cars and houses and to shut the runway until further notice from airport authorities. Residents of the Colombian town Juanchito picked up the pieces on Friday after heavy rainfall caused the Coca River to overflow. The National Unit for Risk Management informed that more than 390 towns are on a red alert throughout the country. According to police and organizers, thousands of people demonstrated in Berlin in favor of taxation of richest and framework for food prices. The protesters responded to several left-wing organizations to protest against soaring prices and rents. Australia edged host Britain 2-1 in the semi-finals of the Billie Jean King Cup finals to move into the summit clash, where they will look to win their first title since 1974.
Third match Australia. 7-6, 6-7, 10-6.
And finally in our news, to attend the World Cup tournament, 4 cyclists traveled 10,000 kilometers from South Africa to Qatar. The Argentina quartet has been traveling for 177 days. To support their national team in the competition, they traveled to Doha on Monday. The cyclists have made a number of lengthy journeys to important sporting events, with this one being the last. They rode bicycles to the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro and then again to the World Cup in Russia.
Very, very happy because it was our main objective of traveling to do it. 10,000 kilometers and get here to the FIFA World Cup. It was beautiful to enter, and seeing the whole country acclimated to the World Championship made us generate extra energy to face the last few kilometers from the border to the red border. So very, very happy and a little tired, and I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, that's all we have for now, but here is a reminder of our top stories for today. Algeria hosts the first edition of the Arab International Conference, an exhibition for small and medium enterprises for 3 days. "151 countries voted in the second and fourth committees of the United Nations General Assembly in favor of the permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people over their natural resources in the occupied territories." And the first session of the 4-day summit of the Southeast Asian bloc has put on the table different global issues to be tackled. While France is welcoming migrants rescued by the humanitarian ship Ocean Viking, the UK is firm to reach a final agreement with France on illegal crossings. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, the news comes to a close. For more, do visit our website or social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.